I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Charles Wallace, and welcome to the Bear Essentials podcast. As we continue on our journey to build a stronger community, I'm very excited to share with you all the Kindness Alliance, which is a unique, free of charge advertising initiative looking to support businesses that share in our core values. Each episode will look to spotlight a different member, celebrating their contributions and dedication to kindness. Would you like to get involved? Just visit the Kindness Alliance section on our website, www.thebearessentialspodcast.com, or just send me a message. And now, a huge thank you to this week's Kindness Alliance member.
Welcome to Family Farms, where our culinary journey is woven with passion, dedication, and a commitment to crafting the finest bacon-wrapped chicken, a timeless delicacy that has tantalized the taste buds since 1974. At Family Farms, we're more than just a traditional name. We've evolved into purveyors of gourmet delights. Join us on this flavorful adventure, where every bite tells a story of tradition, quality, and the enduring spirit of Family Farms.
Hey, Isaac, how you doing? Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Keeping well. Thanks for coming and introducing me to your audience.
Yeah, I'm really, really glad that we finally connected. I've connected with you on social media, LinkedIn to be specific, and definitely someone who epitomizes all the stuff that I love to talk about. And I think that the audience really draws from as far as motivation and inspiration and things like that. So really looking forward to it, Isaac. With that said, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, me too. I immediately connected with you on LinkedIn thinking you're my man because we've got sort of similar synergies in what we talk about. I'm Isaac Kenyon. I'm also known as a world record breaking endurance athlete. I'm a mentor coach. I'm a fellow of the Geographical Society of London, the Geological Society of London. I'm also a geologist, and also the Scientific Exploration Society. I've been doing adventures and outdoor challenges for a very long time, having done some big things like rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, to doing a Ironman with a weighted vest that no one's done before, to cycling on a water bike across sea. I've done all sorts of things like that. But I'm also someone who's very conscious around mental health, and also I'm very focused on sustainability and protecting the planet. And a lot of what I do nowadays is centered around connecting people with nature so that they can understand that their well-being is intrinsically linked with the well-being of the planet, and then therefore want to protect the planet.
Man, you said a mouthful there. And right off the bat, for my audience, hearing your background, not just of your physical exploits, which are fantastic, hearing about your scientific background, you really raised the bar for me, and I'm going to try to keep up here and not embarrass myself. So this is going to be fun. All right. Well, Isaac, you mentioned about environmental causes. I was thinking maybe you could share a moment or experience that really ignited your passion for outdoor adventures and environmental causes.
Yeah, so my passion for outdoor adventures was first on its own. And then I developed a passion for sustainability and the environment and protecting the planet afterwards. So there is a story here. My passion for the outdoor adventures, and it is a confession, stems from a real deep battle of well-being, poor well-being. 10 years ago, I was almost one of those people who took their lives. Every 40, I think every 40 seconds, someone takes their life in the world right now. And well-being is seriously difficult, and I was almost one of those. I had a rock bottom moment at university, and I was just in a deep chasm. I didn't know what was happening to me. I wasn't sure what mental health was. I wasn't educated about mental health. Obviously, I knew I wasn't feeling good because I was down all the time and I was dealing with anxiety and depression, which upon reflection is what I kind of understand it was. And I wasn't speaking out about it until one friend of mine noticed, "You are not you. You are not you. What's going on?" And I said, "I'm just not really enjoying anything at the moment. I wasn't enjoying my studies. I wasn't enjoying any interactions. I was so focused on productivity that, and when I say productivity, I was so obsessed with getting good grades that everything felt second best. And what it resulted in was me just overworking myself to the point where I just started hating myself, and my mind and body was just not in tune with what it used to be like. And my friend noticed it, and he said to me, "Right, you need a break. I want you to go for a walk. Just go for a walk outdoors. Walk until your mind gets clear." And I was just laughing at it, thinking, "Do you know how important this deadline is? And how crap I feel. I'm not going to feel better after a walk. You must be joking." I didn't believe in it. Anyway, I listened to him because I was desperate. I was deeply desperate at the time. So I went for a walk on my own, and I walked from my university campus down to the River Thames we have near where I was at university. I was in Surrey in England. We've got the River Thames that goes up to Windsor. And I was walking along the river, and I kept going and going and going, and started going paths and that sort of thing. And there were people about. I wasn't on my own. But the thing that started to happen was this overthinking, this constant worry, it started to disappear. And I started to listen to nature around me, the birds chirping, the swaying of the trees, the bushes, the rustling leaves. All these sort of senses started coming back. And it was the first time where I started to feel hopeful and happy for a very long time. I walked for about 6 hours that day. I pretty much ruled the day out. I was loving it. I came back, and my friend was still there at the department when he said, "You're not at your best, go for a walk," whatever. And I said, "That was great. I feel good." And he said, "You feel good?" And he smiled at me. And that was a moment of reconnection with nature that changed my life forever. And sometimes we credit our mental health recovery to a pill or a person or something like that. For me, yes, he reached out and he made that step. He saw change in me. He was aware that he saw change, and he wanted to make a difference. But what was significant was nature. And I think if I didn't have nature to turn to on that day, things could have kept going and spiraling. 3 days before that day, I was sitting in bed thinking, I don't want to wake up tomorrow. That's the change. And I started to think differently. I started to say, I want to do more walks. So I started adding these walks into my life. And people say, "Well, how did you go from walks to now doing a row across the Atlantic Ocean to all these big challenges?" And I say one thing. When I was outdoors and when I was moving outdoors, human movement outdoors, this was where I was at my best. I was in this really important state of consciousness where I felt totally absorbed in what I was doing. I was enjoying the moment and I was just happy. And I wanted to do more of that. And I noticed that you can do running outdoors, you can do hiking outdoors, you can do all sorts of these movement sports outdoors. So I got into sort of adventure sports. And the reason why I think it was important to me to do that was because I was finding this thing called flow. And flow is definitely something that I incorporate into my life every single day now. And it's so amazing. And I feel like if anyone doesn't know what flow is, it's essentially that thing that you love doing, that passion, where you just totally absorbed in what you're doing, you're enjoying it. Time is not a problem. You're just there, happy, and you come away feeling energized and refreshed from what you've done. Now, for me, that's like outdoor sports, moving outdoors. For anyone else listening, that could be painting, that could be yoga, that could be something else like that. And when I did this sort of reflection and realized that this flow is what I love, I started to experiment with it. I wanted to see how much flow, you know, what sort of influence that would have in different magnitudes. So doing walks in the parks was the start, and then I ended up swimming in open water and then doing the English Channel swim as my first endurance challenge. So I loved endurance because it's a game of minds, and it also helped me build resilience that I didn't think I have. So when I did the English Channel, I was pretty impressed that I was able to do it and I got through it. And I wanted to do more of this, and I started things like Atlantic Row and that sort of thing. But there was something missing at the time when I was doing these challenges, and that was kind of what is the purpose here? I mean, this is not, you're not doing this for money. Why are you doing this? And I had to keep spinning it back. Well, it makes me feel good, and then everything else seems to get better around me from when I do it. So by focusing on the flow, I realized I was achieving better grades. I was doing better at business. I was having better relationships with people. And that's why I was doing what I was doing. So outdoor adventure, that's how I got into it. It was a mental health battle, and I overcome it. I don't have all the answers, but I know how to get hope from the darkest of places from it. And that's what happened. My love of sustainability and the planet came from a single moment on an endurance challenge. Imagine you're with me. Charles, you've just been invited to row across the ocean with me. We're in a boat now, a tiny 29-foot boat in the middle of the ocean, me and you. Imagine fast waves, quick currents, white-capped sea. Something catches your eye with me. It's a turtle ensnared in a net. Just goes so quick. You can't do anything. You can't get in there at risk of yourself. The waters are moving way too fast. You can't leave the boat. You're rowing the ocean. There's a lot of stresses here, but you see that and you just feel awful. That was such a moment for me where I realized that our actions have far-reaching consequences way past where we think they are. When I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 1,000 miles from shore, and I saw that, I realized that I'm part of the problem. I do like fish. I eat fish. The fishing industry left that net. That net caught that turtle. That turtle is dying. I'm part of the problem. And from that moment, I started to really rethink all my actions. I realized that I had another form of mental health for the first time. My anxiety came back. For a long time, I had no anxieties or issues, but that moment was bringing it back to the feeling of we're killing the planet and I'm part of that problem. How can I help? How can I change the situation? And that's where the moment really lied with me in becoming a person who's now more focused on sustainability leadership and things like this, because I want to be able to reduce my actions and also inspire others to reduce their actions on the environment so that we can have an environment that protects us. And it all goes back down to that walk that I had when I had my rock bottom low. If the nature wasn't there for me on that day, perhaps I would have taken my life later. I was lucky that my friend said, go for the walk. But if that wasn't there, what would I do? So from a selfish point of view, I'm very much an environmental focused champion. But also, I've been able to empathetically see the problems, and I'm now not saying I'm perfect. I'm not the most sustainable person in the world. Otherwise, I'd live under a rock and, have a vegetable patch right by me and never travel anywhere and wouldn't be on this podcast using electricity and a laptop. And, I'm imperfect, but I've been trying my best to be more sustainable in the way I do things. I've changed the way I do adventures. I've changed the way I do my business. So long answers to those two questions. So great question, Charles.
No, I loved hearing the story. I wanted to, as you were because we talked a little bit before we started here. For anybody listening or watching, Isaac came on here extremely upbeat. We were, and it's really early where I'm at, and I'm already wide awake now talking to Isaac for a few minutes. He just exudes energy and he's very upbeat. And hearing that story, Isaac, of your rock bottom and what potentially could have happened, I want to just make that correlation to anybody who's going through it now. They're listening, they're watching. Is this Isaac that sits here in front of us now that we're speaking to really upbeat? I mean, he definitely symbolizes that there is hope out there, and it can get better. I also love the whole outdoor, the walk, the nature. Have you ever heard of the term? I've become pretty enthralled lately with Japanese culture, forest bathing.
Yeah,
Uh,
I do forest bathing. Some of my adventures are very meditative, like forest bathing. They're very much in nature. Instead of being in a meditative setting like forest bathing, I would be moving. I like to move, but I have done forest bathing. I have enjoyed it. So have you done it?
not I guess probably not where I live, where I'm at in the city. We have a park, a state park that's close by, and we've actually added this habit to our routine. My wife and I, we go there every Saturday now, and we literally do like a 3 hour walk around the park and the river all through the woods. So, and I could really, really get what you were saying, because I know on Saturdays, I literally could, Isaac, I kid you not, probably within the hour when I'm done here with you, I will be heading out to do that. So yeah, it's something that I look forward to.
Yeah, I'm going to the sea after this.
Nice.
Just do some swimming and snorkeling and stuff. But yeah, you know what? You can't repeat these in the environment. It's special. It's got so much power that problem what I think nature and the environment isn't valued is because it hasn't been valued monetary. Like there's no money on it. But the actual I think it's more than money. I think it's more important than money. And I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I just know how I feel when I do it, and I've even incorporated now over the past month or so. I try to do all my workouts outside. It's a different feeling. So, um, well, I wanted to ask you, and it really gets me excited, and I probably live somewhat vicariously through someone like you, hearing about your adventures. You've definitely had some remarkable expeditions. Maybe could we talk about some of the most challenging moments you faced during these adventures, and probably more importantly, how did you overcome them?
Generally, each adventure I've chosen has been crafted to have a different challenge. So not often all of them have similarities. So as a person, I have a lot of values in authenticity and challenge, adventure, growth, learning. These are like intrinsic values to myself. And I really seek out something different in every expedition or challenge or big thing I set. And the reason why I do it is because I am obsessed with personal growth. I really love to also understand myself better. I like to understand how I will work in a different environment when things aren't the same as usual. And that means when answering that question, almost every single challenge I've ever done has a unique, specific challenge that was really hard at that moment. We could go through all of them. I mean, there's so many. But I'll just choose a few, and that might be better. Um, One of my most recent challenges was an Iron Man, or I call it Iron Human. And the reason why I call it Iron Human is because men and women both do it, and I believe that it would be a better fitting name for this sort of challenge. It's an ultra triathlon. So Ironmans or Iron Humans, they're an ultra triathlon. For anyone listening, if they don't know what it is, it's I think it's a 3.8 kilometer swim followed by a 112-mile or 180-kilometer cycle ride, followed by a marathon, all in that order, continuous. So it's a big old day. The average time it takes people to complete this is often 14 hours. It's often touted as one of the toughest single endurance events known to people. And Man challenge as an experiment to play with a metaphorical message with mental health. And I threw on a 15-kilo weighted vest to make this challenge not just a hard Ironman challenge, but also to represent the weight of mental health struggles that people often don't see. So I was trying to make the invisible visible here with this weighted vest. And it's a big old day. You know, I've done an Ironman in about 12 hours without weighted vest. When I did this Ironman, now the psychological thing or the challenge here was I knew the trajectory was I will just get weaker and weaker on this challenge, and that weight will remain the same. So I knew inevitably there will be a point where I just can't go on and I will collapse. And I think every single person who decides to do a weighted vest Ironman, I would be very surprised if you could do a double weighted vest Ironman, a triple weighted vest Ironman, a quadruple. Eventually, the weight will get you. And that's the metaphor for mental health, is that if we continue to carry the weight, yes, we will get weaker and weaker, and the weight will remain the same, and eventually it will get you. So my metaphor was take the weight off, remove the weight as fast as you can, and you can be your best self. And I think when I have ever done any of these challenges, I've always removed the shackles of poor mental well-being before I start any of these challenges, and I do it on purpose because I want to be my 100%. And if my well-being's poor, I'm not at my 100%, I shouldn't really be doing this challenge. So with this particular challenge, the Ironman with the weighted vest, the psychological side of things was the hardest thing to comprehend. I was on my own, self-supported, doing a weighted vest Ironman. I had to swim with the weighted vest. That always gets people. They always think, wow, you swam with 15 kilos on for about 4K-ish. That's crazy. But of course I trained for it, and I developed ways to deal with the imbalance, the additional weight. I learned that you need to kick way harder. I needed to work on my core. I also needed to work on my shoulders because I'll be lifting the weight every time I tried to do a stroke because the weighted vest encompassed over my shoulder. But the hardest part was probably the breathing because the weighted vest is a certain distance from your body. You can't fully expand your lungs to your full capacity when you're swimming because you've got the weighted vest in the way. So I had to be quite careful with my panic or anything like that. So when you get the cold water shock when you're outdoors, I had to be really good at keeping my breath work under control. And that was really good because it's obviously what you need when you're going through an anxiety panic attack. A lot of what helps is breath work. Deep breathing, slow breaths, tuning into that. And I think that's kind of how I got through the Ironman. But the psychological challenge was the hardest on that one. A different challenge that I already alluded to, we'll just carry on with the Atlantic Row Challenge. That was 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. I was in a team of 4. So there's 4 guys on this 29-foot by sort of 6-foot wide boat. It was 2 hours on, 2 hours off. And one of the biggest fears was or the unknown. And that was probably the biggest challenge because you can prepare for storms. You can prepare for food running out. You can prepare for issues with electricity. You can prepare for a lot of these things. But one thing that we couldn't prepare for very well was disposition. The feeling of being out at sea for 40 days, not seeing sight of land. And I say 40 days because it took us 40 days. It could have been 80 days. It could have been longer. Things could have happened. But the biggest challenge there was the disposition. And that was something that we had to simulate and work together with. And one of the things that helped us get through that disposition was that true understanding, that self compassion and self-awareness with ourselves and each other, understanding and having this sort of culture where you could openly say, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not feeling great about this situation. Can we talk through or work out a way to do it? So that open trust and communication was really key. So the challenge really was, although disposition was a challenge, the real challenge of the challenge was team dynamics.
Hmm.
And everyone says, no, it wasn't the 20-foot rolling waves. It wasn't those ginormous storms. It wasn't the fact that you're rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off continuously for a very long time, lack of sleep. No, I would say none of those things paled in comparison to team dynamics and making sure that everyone was authentic, trustworthy, was telling the truth, was able to voice their concerns, and also be empathetic to each other and help each other through the difficult times. That was the biggest challenge of that one. So I've spoken about two now. Do you want me to go for? I've got a third. Happy?
Yeah. Hey,
Happy with.
I enjoy hearing about these. Yes, go ahead.
And the third challenge that was really hard and most difficult part of the challenge was I did a world record attempt. I succeeded in the world record for the longest continual indoor row on an indoor rowing machine in Erg. I rowed for 83 hours non-stop. It was 3.5 days. It was a big old row. And it was actually preparation for the Atlantic row. It was one of the ways we were able to prepare for the Atlantic row. What was the biggest challenge there? And no one gets it, but no one guesses it. But I say, all I had to do was roll over and it would all finish. The tap out was immediate. Immediate. So the rule is you have to keep that fan spinning. So when you're pulling on the row machine cord, it spins the fan. And as long as that fan is constantly spinning, you're tapping in time. All I had to do was stop the fan spinning and then just roll over. That's how quick it was to lose on that one. So I found that the biggest challenge there was the easy tap out.
Wow. Interesting to me, speaking to you now, and I've had a few other guests on that had done some type of rowing challenge over the Atlantic. One in particular was Damian Brown. He went from Ireland to Manhattan. But when I spoke to him too, it's funny, like when I ask these questions, I expect to hear about the waves, all of that. And all the time is pretty similar. It's all these different things that I think someone from the outside looking in wouldn't really think about. But yeah, that's some fascinating stuff. And as you were speaking about the indoor rower, I was just imagining because after 30 minutes, I'm ready to like get up off of that, and then I can barely walk after that. So kudos to you. I think this is a good segue though, because of the adventure, and you mentioned it a little bit, Isaac, in the beginning. But how do you now balance that? I'll say the thrill of your adventure, but now your responsibility on minimizing your environmental footprint during your adventures and expeditions.
Yeah, that was a big lifestyle change. I mean, when I wanted to make a difference in the world around me, I first had to look inwards. Okay, so how am I living right now? What's my lifestyle like? And I had to be authentic and truthful. I had to list out all the things that I was doing that was positive for the environment and all the things I was doing that was negative for the environment. And not everybody wants to do that. But I think that's the basis of start. If you don't measure, you can't change. If you think of every single professional athlete, they're measured on time or something. Everyone's got a measurement. That's how they get better at something. And when it comes to sustainability, I found that to get over the eco anxiety, the scare, I had to measure where I was at. I needed to benchmark myself. So what happened was I started this journey of identifying all the things that I was doing, my day-to-day life. Okay, I wake up. What do I eat? Okay, where do I go? How much travel do I do? What sort of events do I go to? What sort of absolutely everything. And then working out, is there a better, more sustainable way of doing that? and I found adventures, taking a flight to, Everest Base Camp or something like that. It was not very sustainable. There's a lot of carbon emissions there. And additionally, from what you see in sort of these expeditions, a lot of rubbish is left up on Everest. And I know people who've gone to the top of Everest and they have taken microplastic samples and they found microplastics at the top. I've also found found friends who found microplastics in the South Pole and across the ocean. They're everywhere. Our impact is everywhere. I wanted to minimize the impact, and I found that actually, because unless I can sustainably travel to Everest in a cleaner, greener way, then my impact's pretty low. Taking a flight over is pretty bad on the environment in terms of carbon emissions. But I recently found that if I took the slow journey, the accommodation stays, the train travel, or the hiking, or the biking, or the food that you would take on a slow travel all the way to Everest is actually worse than the flight in terms of emissions. So you start getting to this conundrum of, okay, well, maybe emissions isn't the biggest thing. Maybe there's other things too. And the other things could be your impact on the actual environment. We don't have many places on land that are untouched. And when I say untouched, aren't influenced by human activity. One of the things I keep bringing Everest into this conversation is because it's the golden adventure, it's the one everyone wants to go on. But this one has also got some of the most environmentally damaging practices out there. You go up Everest, you take your stuff with you, and then a lot of people's kit and rubbish is just left up there to degrade and damage the natural pristine environment. And one of the things that I wanted to do was not be an influence like that. So yes, I could probably get there in a more sustainable way. I could carbon offset my flight and whatever. I could try and take all my rubbish and things like that. But I'm actually still supporting the industry out there that is not quite being so clean. So I started to think about doing maybe cleaner and greener adventures, and I call them eco adventures. I came up with the term where we do more than just experience nature. We do more than just get out there and enjoy the nature. We try to nurture it and regenerate and restore it. So now the sorts of things I get up to, Charles, is I will create an adventure, and then I'll think of a way that I can give back to the environment whilst on the adventure itself. So, okay, fastest are probably not on the question anymore if I'm going to do all these additional things like a litter pick or conservation, tree planting during the expedition. These sort of things are going to slow the journey down. So I had to make a sacrifice. I'm unlikely to do the world fastest things anymore, but I could maybe do the world longest things, or some sort of expeditions around that. So that's what I've had to do. I've had to change the way I do things. I try to keep things local. I think the more local I am to the adventure experience now, the less impact that will have. I also am very encouraging of community and community action, because I think if we all steward the areas around us, we'll be able to be more effective in protecting those areas, because we're more in tune with that area, and we will also have a deeper care and love for it because it's our local area that we use as a recreational space or something like this. So I try to do a lot of adventures that bring in the community too. And then, yeah, it's, what I eat. Can I avoid things that come from all over the world and just eat local? And I've tried my tap into all the local fruit and veg shops, all the local butchers, everything that's local. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3-4 years since that turtle. Since I saw that turtle, I made that shift. That turtle on the Atlantic Row was a huge thing for me.
Well, I think as you were talking, I was thinking about, and I'll be honest with you, until this morning, I don't think I particularly have ever went out of my way to think about my own environmental footprint, right? It's, I know as a kid, I can remember driving along the highway with my parents, and if somebody would throw something out the car window, that would bother me. Like, why would we do that, right? You know, so obviously the litter, things like that. I think though, this came to me as you were speaking, what I wanted to ask you is, why do you think as humans, for the most part, we don't consider it more? Do you think we just don't get the importance of nature to our well-being, or we just don't care?
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine in the United Nations sort of nature recovery area, and he said there's striking statistics that they have focused on how disconnected cities are from nature. And he said that disconnection is where a lot of the problems lie. There's no value on it because they don't use the nature. They're not. What we find is that when people get outdoors and have fun, enjoy the activities like kayaking or something, they learn to love what they're doing, and in the process, they learn to love the environment because the environment facilitates the action of a kayaking. Now, more and more people are in cities living in, I call it the square. Um, they're on their screens. They're in square boxes within rooms. You know, their rooms are square. They're looking out the square window. It's all like, we're living in a box in cities, and the box is keeping us away from nature. And I know nature's chaotic. It's not structured, and some people don't like the chaoticness of nature, and they like the rigid box or whatever. But I think we need to have a more cultural representation of nature throughout cities. We need more nature focused activities that get people out into nature from cities so they can understand the value that it has. Otherwise, we're destroying what is so important for our ecosystem. If we don't value it, what I always say to people is that we will leave first. We will kill ourselves first. Nature will recover and it will still be here. The earth will still be here. We won't. Climate change. And the climate will always change. I'm a geologist. The climate's always changed. We've had hot spells, ice ages. We've had so many different climates. It's us to adapt, not it to adapt to us. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. That's how I try to frame it. And I like sort of I always have sort of battles with certain people, of course, but I think the majority are on my side here that, we need to protect the planet and we also need to get outdoors more. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. One of the things that I think is really important is that building that intrinsic link for us as humans again. In the past, we had these urban sprawl cities that were a bit smaller, maybe, and there was a lot more nature corridors running through these cities. Nowadays, because we've just expanded so fast, there are places where there's just no nature. During the pandemic, for instance, there were locations within deprived areas of urban environments in the UK where people just couldn't get out for 50. We had these sort of lockdowns in the UK where you had to spend an hour or so outdoors. That was all you were allocated, and it took people almost half an hour of a walk to get to a nature space. By that point, they got to turn around, because they've only got an hour allocated. So there was a lot of nature deprivation. People are deprived of nature in cities. So I think that's one of the problems. And when I say that's one of the problems, is because most of the population lives in cities. So there's a proportionality there as well. So I think that's one of the things that I try to encourage is getting people out of the cities into nature so they can connect with it. And I also lobby for, getting more nature corridors in cities and trying to regenerate and restore natural habitats within cities so people can kind of tap into it. There's some great work happening in London. They have this thing called the National Park City Foundation, which is promoting the sort of nature areas of London and trying to expand them. So I think that's really cool. But yeah, I think to answer your question, yes, there is a huge disconnect currently, and it's growing. So the game for me is let's try and reconnect. So I'm trying to do the opposite. hopefully everyone comes off this podcast and goes for a walk or something in the outdoors. If that's all that anyone does after this podcast, I've done my job.
Yeah, or I like to put the headphones in sometimes and even listen as I'm walking around. But I have found, and it's funny that you just brought that up, because I've actually stopped when I go to the park. I won't wear headphones because now I actually like to listen to the sounds of the park. So no, I think, yeah, hopefully this will start to help people. And, if anything, it'll get people up and outside and moving. So you definitely seem like you are a conscious person who takes responsibility, and you are really trying to have a positive ripple effect. So what I wanted to ask you, Isaac, to kind of wrap up here was, as far as you, for better or worse, you've become and you're looked at as inspiring, and you have a lot of eyes on you, people that follow you and look to you. Was it on purpose that you became a inspiration to people? Do you realize you're an inspiration to people, and how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I think I've come round to it because of one thing, one trait. And this one trait is that there's a lot of people able to articulate problems in the world. There's a great amount of people who are able to say, this is the issue, and there's a lot of people who have a lot of ideas. But there's not a lot of people taking action and doing and being like, hey, I see the problem, let me take care of that. I understand that that's probably one of the things that people are drawn to. They like the fact that I see the issue, but I'm trying to do something about the issue, and then I actually do something about the issue. And I think that's probably where maybe the inspiration comes from often. Um, and that I think is what I'm really proud of. I think that's one of my most admirable traits that I love, and it all came from mental health problems. If I didn't take the action, I would have died. I was able to articulate the problem. I knew that there was an issue, but it was only when I made that jump and made that move and took that action to do that walk and get out there and start living what the idea was, I was able to start changing my life. And then since then, I've just stuck to that. And I was like, this has worked. This is continuing to work. I'm going to continue doing that. And I've done it in everything I do. So yeah, I feel privileged and lucky to have worked that out. But I hope anyone who comes out of the podcast sees the same and thinks, do you know what? Let me take care of that. And even if you don't have the answers, like the Atlantic Row, I didn't know the answers. I'd never rowed before or even been at sea. I'd not done any of that. But let me take care of that. I'll work it out.
I love I love that mindset about it. And I think it's something that so many people will get a lot out of. So do you have anything upcoming projects that, are about to happen? Really, like, anything the audience would be interested in checking out, following more
Well,
closely?
yeah, I've always got different projects, and I'm working more in a coaching capacity now. So I'm trying to do some more coaching at the moment, and so that I can instill some principles that hopefully help others to unlock their goals and get over some of the problems they're dealing with. And in doing so, I started to change my adventure approach to be of a coaching adventurer. So maybe there's an idea there that someone has, and instead of me leading and doing it, perhaps I can coach that person to live it. So I'm starting to do that now. One hopefully next month in August, a good friend of mine that heard me speak at a talk I wanted to do an eco adventure and had an idea. And I said, well, that's great. How about I help you get there?
Mm.
And that's my new adventure, helping people to do that. And then from a personal standpoint, outside of the coaching side of things, my next sort of big adventure is the Climate Explorers Community Eco Adventures business is a community interest company, which essentially creates and facilitates eco adventures, which are team building activities with sustainability education. And what we do is we do some climate action, we do some adventure, and we do some talks and education around the planet and why it's important. And it's primarily focused at businesses, but also underprivileged areas in those cities to reconnect the people disconnected. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on at the minute. And you'll find, if you type in Climate Explorers, you'll find all about what we're doing there. And so that's my next adventure. It's a business adventure. I'm also doing a physical adventure with that person in August.
Fantastic. Isaac, I think the biggest compliment I can give to you, and I truly mean this, is when I interview people and have people join me on the show, I just love when I come out of it and I go, you know what, that's somebody that he makes me want to be a better person. And I can't thank you enough for that. And I am into personal growth myself, and this is why I do this. And you definitely gave me a lot to think about today, in a really, really good way. And I think that you're going to have a nice impact on people that listen to this. So that being said, where can people follow you online, social media, website, anything like that?
That's really nice to say. Thank you, Charles. I'm on isaackenyon.com. So ISAACKENYON. You just Google and you'll find me in various capacities, social media, Instagrams, and all that stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you to everyone for listening. I just want to say this to close it out. Please follow Isaac. I think, it's people like him, may be somewhat less notable, but definitely probably more worth your time. And it's people like that I really love having on the show. And Isaac, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm excited for what the future holds for you. And I think more importantly, I'm excited to see what your future holds for the world. I think it's going to be something incredible to watch. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles. Great speaking with you today.
Yeah, well, thanks again, Isaac. And as always, I really appreciate the support from everyone. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Selfishly, I know I did. So hopefully you all did too. So thanks again, everyone. Take care. Bye.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.